Good morning, everyone. Let me start one more time. Good morning, everyone. That's much better. I know it's not early, so we can talk. So what I'm going to do is speak for 10 minutes about AI and higher education, the implications of AI for higher education, and then Luis and I are going to have a dialogue together. And I want you to notice that Luis doesn't have a tie and I have a tie because he gave me his tie. So you must have heard, and Luis told me that throughout this conference, about the implications of AI on jobs and the workforce. And you have heard also about various studies projecting that up to 50% of the jobs we know are going to disappear. And those jobs that are going to disappear are not only blue-collar jobs, but white-collar jobs too. AI, in many ways, is colorblind. And, you know, when people start arguing, they say, no, it's not 50% of the jobs, it's maybe 40, it may be 30. The implications are enormous. In the emerging world, the World Bank is projecting that up to 70% of the jobs are going to disappear in the next 20 years. Now, it is true that we are going to see new jobs arising. As a matter of fact, we are seeing them as we speak. And you know them, and I can list them, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to do that. What we don't know is whether the new jobs in the short run are going to be enough to compensate for the disappearance of the old jobs. And this has profound implications for society, for inequality, etc., etc., etc. I'm not a labor economist. Luis is an economist. He can tell you more about the implications. But what I would like to do is focus more on, in this new world, what is the role and the mission and the obligation of higher education. The obligation of higher education, its mission, are very simple. We need, as educators, to help people become robot-proof, hence the title of the book. What does it mean to be robot-proof? It means that we are going to strive to be immune to the changes and the impact of AI and robotics. How are we going to do it? It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. First, I say that every learner has to master something called humanics. Let me repeat the name, humanics. You didn't hear it before. And what is humanics? Humanics is the integration of three literacies: a tech literacy, a data literacy, and a human literacy. So allow me to explain. I'm saying that every learner nowadays has to master the tech literacy, which means understanding how to work with computing, how to work with machines, and how to interact with machines. Second is a data literacy, understand the big sea of information generated by computing and how to navigate that. And third is the third literacy is focusing on the human literacy, namely what we humans can do that machines cannot duplicate. And what are they? Is the ability to be innovative, entrepreneurial, creative, the ability to look people in the eye, to look at Lucia, understand her body language, see whether she agrees with me or not, to work with other people in team setting, to be culturally agile, to understand people coming from different horizons, and to be global. So what I'm saying is that every person has to master, every learner has to master humanics, which is the integration of the three literacies. But you know that if I give you books to read and courses on creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, that's not enough. Why? In order to understand it, we have to do it. And the second phase of what I'm saying is that, yes, in order to master humanics, you need to engage yourself in experiential learning. And what is experiential learning? Experiential learning is doing what you are learning. So, you know, in my own institution at Northeastern, we have long-term co-ops where students go for 6 months each, and we are in 136 countries, and there for 6 months, they practice what is being done. Now, why is it relevant? It is relevant because it allows them to understand what they are good at, what they are not good at, to understand the others, how to work in teams, to see gaps and opportunities so you can start building companies or not-for-profits that are going to fill the gaps, and at the same time to work with people from different backgrounds on a global scale. That's one example. But there is something more to it. Experiential education is what differentiates humans from machines. What is experiential education? Experiential education is the transfer of your knowledge from a context to another. Machines do not know how to go from a context to a context to a context to another context. We as human beings are wired to look at an infinite number of contexts. Machines cannot do it. So once again, you start seeing the general approach that you are taking, that I'm advocating. Start focusing on what we humans can do that machines cannot do. If we compete with machines, we lose. If they compete with us on our turf, they lose. So what makes us different is what I call the human literacy, and what makes us different is the ability to be experiential, namely to transfer our knowledge, and not only our knowledge, but our engagement from a context to another. And that is something that machines cannot do, at least in the very long future. So becoming robot-proof is a journey. Master humanics, do it via experiential education, but don't stop there. Machines are going to get ever more performing. They are going to displace more jobs and create new ones, which means that, in fact, every one of us is going to be obsolete. That means very simply that we need lifelong learning. And lifelong learning is something that, at least in the United States, higher education has not integrated. We look at lifelong learning as a second-class operation. If I tell you, in the United States, 76% of the learners are lifelong learners. In other words, the overwhelming majority of learners are lifelong learners. So imagine that you are ignoring the largest segment that you need to serve. And that is risky. And if we continue to ignore that, it may happen to us what happened to the railway industry in the United States and elsewhere. But in the United States, when the railway industry saw the beginning of the airline revolution, they looked at it and they said, this is not us, we are in the railway business. They didn't say, we are in the transportation business. So higher education has to integrate lifelong learning because it's a necessity. But in order to do lifelong learning, we have to relearn how to do it. People don't have time to come back to college or to the university. People don't want courses. People want something, deliveries that is personalized on demand. And they want it wherever they are, and also they want it whenever they need it. At the same time, the employers are looking at it and they want real outcomes, which means that when a university starts looking at lifelong learning, it has to do it with humility. It's not the case that we are going to build those curricula, build those courses, and people will come. No, you have to sit down with the employers, you have to sit down with the mature learners and understand what their needs are, and then create units that are not necessarily built towards a degree like a master's or beyond a master's. You have to look at it in chunks, certificates, stackable certificates that will lead you to widen and deepen what you need whenever you need it. So in other words, what I'm saying, in the future, you do not need to go to the university, the university has to come to you. And it's not via online education only. It has to be embedded in companies, it has to be embedded where the learners are in different cities, and you are going to see the rise of multi-universities that have multiple locations worldwide. So what I'm saying is very simple. Becoming robot-proof is a lifelong learning journey. It starts very early on and never ends. And this is why higher education is more relevant than ever to help society adapt to this new age of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. That was very inspiring. Joseph Aoun, on his free time from being the president of a big university, has found the time to write this book, which is very interesting. As he was mentioning some of the main ideas, higher education, the age of artificial intelligence. I think there will be some copies later, so we'll talk a bit about that. As he mentioned, I'm a labor economist. I'm somebody who's been looking a lot at the labor market. And there is one phenomenon that I want to mention, I think is going to give us the entry into his book, which is the idea of the polarization of the labor market. What we see is that the middle falls out. The routine skills are not low skills in the traditional sense we think about them. Routine skills are middle skills. They're the skills of workers in a conveyor belt in a factory, or the skills of workers or of office workers working in a bank or an insurance company. Now, the middle goes out. Yes, the top continues to be there, but another part that continues to be there very strongly is all the service part of the economy that in some sense are low wage jobs, starting from security guards, cleaning, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, etc., etc. And here comes my question. My first reflection on the book and my first question to you, which is, what really is what machines can do and what they can't, and is it us convincing ourselves that our skills are really valuable when we think of chess, which is the first things that computers did, and you talk about this in your book. We see a lot of things that we think are very high that computers immediately master, and a lot of things that we think are very easy that, in fact, computers find impossible. And in your domain, you're a linguist, one big area of progress of computers has been translation. Google Translate has basically revolutionized translation. Right now, if you try Google Translate, you will discover that it works very well already. So my question is, you talk about fiction as one possibility. You don't talk a lot about emotions, although you do talk about social skills. What is it that really is the core of being human, and what's the core of what we really think? Look, you know, I challenge you on the fiction. I think computers will write songs, and I think computers will write books, but maybe computers will never serve us a coffee because we'll want a person to make eye contact with us.
Well, as a matter of fact, now we have restaurants in the United States where robots are serving food and also preparing the food. So that's not, I think that my role is not to predict what disappears, what will not disappear, but to focus more, as you said, Luis, on what is unique to human beings. And as I said, you know, what is unique to humans is that we can innovate, we can create, we can be entrepreneurial, we can weep with others, we can love others. That's the emotion. We can empathize. I talk a lot about empathy. We can also understand people, and we can, after a tsunami, you know, we can think about new endeavors to launch that a computer doesn't think about. When you are in the workforce and you are looking at the workforce, look at your own example, Luis. You are working as a policy advisor to a party here. Why do we need you? Why do they need you?
I don't know.
So they need you for a simple reason. Because you can give them, don't blush, Luis, that's fine. You are giving them insights that data and machines cannot do by themselves. And that's the beauty of the human attributes, those attributes that I mentioned. So be entrepreneurial, be creative, transfer your knowledge from a domain to another. That's something that machines have not been able to do.
But Joseph, how many people are really employed in our economy, being entrepreneurial, being creative, transferring? I mean, most people are doing jobs.
Great. Let me tell you, there is a misunderstanding of entrepreneurship. People think being an entrepreneur means that you have to launch a new startup, a new company. Every time you are in a job, whatever it is, and you look at it differently, and you say, I can make things in a different way, I can conceive of what's being done in a different way, even if you are in a large company, you are an entrepreneur, you are an innovator. This organization today is an organization that is innovative. That's why we are here. So don't think about entrepreneurship as only a startup. That's a fallacy. Yes, starting something from scratch is terrific, is valuable. But many people are in large organizations, and if you want, every person who within a large organization can rethink what is being done, what she is doing, she is an entrepreneur. Let's go beyond this small definition. It's not helping us.
So let me put it maybe slightly different. Let's take the perspective of a student. And you're telling a student today, look, computers are coming, you need to study more. And the student answers, student reads and hears what's going on today here and says, she says, look, I think that if I study linguistics to be a translator, or I think if I study computer science, as you write in your book, maybe computer science will be done by computers, maybe programming will be done by... And the student tells you, you know what, I don't think student studying pays. I prefer to be working as a hairdresser or in a tattoo parlor, because I think hairdressers will always exist. How do you persuade the student, look, education will always be worth it, and really, what would you recommend this student, who is probably in the audience today, what would you recommend them to do?
First of all, the example of hairdresser is a bad example. It may disappear for two reasons. Some people like me lost their hair. and the second, more importantly, is that it's very easy to have machines. Actually, we're experimenting with robots now cutting your hair, taking care of your needs, etc. So that is let me go back now to your more fundamental question. What I am saying is that in whatever you do, start by cultivating what is unique to you as human beings. You don't know which aspects of your profession or your expertise is going to disappear. You're an economist. Are you safe?
Mm-hmm.
No?
I don't know.
I think you told me you gave up tenure in London to come here.
Yes.
So you didn't practice safety. But let's go back to this point. We don't know which jobs are going to disappear in the long run. We can project accounting, radiology, etc. We have lists. Why? Because those are based on routines. But therefore, the person has to be in a lifelong learning situation. I am obsolete. You are obsolete. Every one of us is obsolete. And therefore, that means that we have to be in a lifelong learning situation, re-educate ourselves, reskill ourselves, upskill ourselves. If we don't do it, we become victims. And therefore, it's not a question of convincing. It's a question of offering lifelong opportunities. And if we don't do it, we are all going to suffer. Actually, let me give you examples from the United States. Why is it the case that the Rust Belt is suffering? They went into the old economy of coal, etc. You know, is the old economy. It's not needed anymore. They need to move into the new economy. Who is helping us do it? Who is helping them do it? We are not doing that. And therefore, it's not the job of convincing. People understand what they need. Actually, we surveyed last year with Gallup, Northeastern University and Gallup surveyed what the attitudes of people towards AI. Everybody knew that AI is going to displace them. They knew that. And they knew that they need to educate themselves and reskill themselves. So it's not a question of convincing. It's a question of offering opportunities, and universities have to do it.
So I have a little bit of a different perspective on the social and emotional, on the service economy. I do think that, yes, there are machines that serve you coffee, but nobody wants, I mean, people pay three euros to go to a place, but they could just put €1 in a box and the coffee would come out. That already exists. So for us, that aspect of the eye contact of the person who knows you and who tells you what coffee do you want, etc., I think that is part of
that's exactly, I agree with you, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, the ability of interact with others, the ability of working in teams, the ability of understanding people, their emotions, where they are going, how to work with them, that's unique. And so you're reinforcing exactly what I'm saying, Luis.
So let me tell you.
Let me mention something
Yes.
about coffee.
Yes.
When I say that there are restaurants where you are served with robots, I'm not saying that you are going to a machine and push the button. The robot is coming to you.
Yes.
The robot will even give you a massage.
Okay.
Luis.
Maybe it's okay. Let me pass to our jobs, which are our concern. So universities and the obsolescence of universities and what can higher education do. So take a look there at that side of the room.
Why this side, not this side?
The right side. So notice where people are looking. Where are people looking? Are they looking at you? They're actually looking at the screen. I had never noticed before. People are actually seeing us live by looking at the screen, which really tells you something about our jobs, right? Which is, we think, oh, the immediacy, you know, professors are always going to be around, higher education needs this contact, I need to be looking at your eyes, we need to be making contact. But even in a setting where we're actually here in person, people are actually happily watching the screen because the screen somehow is bigger and it's good quality, so they look there. So my first question on the future of universities is, what's the sense of universities when people have YouTubes where they can see the highest, best professor teach the best calculus and they can actually see us talking in the screen?
Look, knowledge is becoming a commodity. You have knowledge everywhere for free. You don't go to college or to the university because you want to have the knowledge. We are going to the university in order to go beyond that, in order to start understanding yourself, to start understanding others. This is the role of experiential education, as I said. The teacher is no longer the center of the world. The teacher is a coach helping others. Courses by themselves, being in a large setting where you have 100 students or 60 or 300, those are becoming obsolete. What is the role of colleges and universities is to bring people together, let them interact with you, with the material and with each other, and then let them experience that in a real-world setting. That's a humbling experience, incidentally, for educators. Why? Because we are not the center of the world anymore. We are at best coaches. We are also ourselves becoming obsolete. And which means that we constantly have to re-educate ourselves, re-skill ourselves, reinvent ourselves. And from this perspective, let me tell you, we are a conservative bunch in higher education. We want to change the world, but we don't want to change ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, the students vote with their feet. So the future is not going to be the same future. Frankly, you don't need to be here today to listen to a dialogue or to be in a summit. Why are you doing it? You are doing it because it's an opportunity for you to network, to talk with others, to really have encounters that you cannot have in a normal setting. Think about it in the same way for students. They are there to encounter other students, to learn from each other, to learn with you, and to be experiential, to allow them to be experiential and integrate the classroom experience with the world experience.
So why don't you tell us a bit, I think that people will learn from that, about your experience in Northeastern, about the co-op approach, a little bit, given people a little bit of a sense for, it's a very different model than the one people in Europe are used to experiencing. For how exactly do you try to get people to have this experiential learning?
In general, in higher education worldwide is not very differentiated. We usually have a model, and the model is we take students for 3 years or 4 years, depending on the country, and we essentially make them focus on courses plus some mobility. For instance, you have the Erasmus program in Europe, which is great, and that's it. The approach of experiential learning is very different. The approach of experiential learning is focused on the idea that in order to learn, you need to integrate the classroom experience with the world experience. If you are in a company, or if you are in an NGO for 6 months, you are testing what you have learned, you are refining it, and you are understanding also yourself and others. So our students essentially apply for jobs in for-profits, not-for-profits, worldwide, as I said, in 136 countries. We have 3,000 employers worldwide, and they have to be admitted. They are paid, and during this period, we have a mentor there in the company, and when they return, we integrate what they have done in the classroom. This allows them to understand themselves, as I said, what they are good at, what they are not good at, to understand the others. I can start knowing how to work with others, to understand the gaps, the opportunities. Very often they come back and they say, I want to launch this company, this not-for-profit, and also to be ready for the world. This model is global and is experiential. It worked very well for us because, just to give you an example, as a private university in the United States, we have 62,000 applications for 2,800 seats. Why? Why are they applying? Not because I'm good looking, but because they want this experiential education. And what I said before is that experiential education is an edge that humans have over machines, because machines do not know how to transfer their generalization from a context to another to infinite context, and that's what we do well. So that's the idea. Do not, if you want to start MISA, co-op, do not make the mistake of starting something and say, oh, they are going on internships. That's meaningless. You have to prepare them before they go. You have to have a mentor in the company, and when they come back, you have to integrate it. Otherwise, they live in schizophrenic worlds. Now, if you ask me, do employers like it? The employers love it. We have more demand than supply. Why? Because employers are really looking at the students with them as a source of energy, as a source of creativity. At the same time, they are looking at a pipeline for talent. they are getting to know them, and the students are getting to know the employer. And by the time they leave the university, they have multiple offers from their co-op employers. Actually, in the United States, we have what has been discussed as the best job placement in the country. Why? Because of that.
So I anticipate a criticism that many people might have. I'm an economist, you're talking about the job market, and people might say, look, the role of education is not to prepare people for jobs. Jobs are maybe gone, who knows, maybe in 40 years many people won't work. They will be doing other things. Where does the part of preparing, and let me give you one example that is future-proof. The example is from Yuval Harari, so I know it's not very politically correct, but I just put it in his words. He says, can people live in a virtual reality world without doing real work? And he says, yeah, like playing games. He said, yeah. He said, I'm Israeli, and we have a community of people who are Orthodox Jews who spend their life studying a book and advancing levels, like in a video game. If you become very good at the book, you advance, and eventually you become very knowledgeable, and all you've done all your life is read a book and talk about that book, the Torah. So in a world where maybe we have to prepare people for something which is not jobs in the sense that we think, but maybe this other life of reading poems and talking to others and beauty and all the other things, where does that fit in this?
Look, let me go a step above that. In higher education, we have created a dichotomy between learning to live, learning to earn a living. Those two, this dichotomy, actually, if you look at it historically, is a dichotomy that is very surprising, because higher education in the Western world, at least, started with Bologna and the monastic tradition before that. And what is the monastic tradition? Is close people to think about God, the scriptures, correct? Mm-hmm. Now, afterwards, with the enlightenment, people started focusing on understanding the world. Physics, optics, etc. Then life sciences afterwards, then now nano, etc. Higher education is there to prepare you for the world and to prepare you for worlds that do not exist. And you cannot do it if you divorce yourself from the world. It doesn't mean that the world, we are giving you an experience in a world that will not change. We are allowing you to experience different worlds through a global approach, different aspects of this world, knowing that you are an agent. It is time to go beyond this fallacy that, oh, higher education, you spend your time for 3 years cocooned in a campus and thinking. No, you think, you do, you impact, you weep, you love, and you change.
So how do you apply this co-op idea, and you do mention something about that in the book, to the liberal arts, to the humanistic traditions, etc.?
More than ever. You know, our students doing the humanities, history, English, are involved in, and I give you examples where they are impacting not only organizations, companies that have nothing to do with history, but also it allows them to understand their historical studies in a different way. When they are looking at wars in the Balkans or in Myanmar and involved in not-for-profits and NGOs there, you know, they are bringing a humanist approach, and they are designing companies, not-for-profits, based on that. Let me give you another example. Our computer science students, all of them now are involved in improvisation. Why? Because through improvisation they understand the other. They understand what makes you laugh, what makes you weep, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. So more than ever, we need to focus on the human attributes. The person you quoted, what he's saying is nothing more than we are human beings. And what I am saying is nothing more. Let's cultivate what is unique to human beings.
Very good. Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? Yes, we have a question there. Can we have a mic? Maybe you can say it and I'll repeat it.
Otherwise, I can sing it here. That's the first time I was introduced, incidentally, by a band.
Yes, it's very good. It was great music. Thank you. One question, and then we'll go.
Thank you for your inspiring words, Mr. Aoun. You're talking about the importance of the education, but the good education is not available for everyone. How do you think this problem can be solved? Because at the end, education is also business, right?
You're raising a very important point. For those who didn't hear it in the back, not everyone has access to education. And what I am saying is that education now is first lifelong. Therefore, society has to provide access to lifelong learning to every citizen. Different countries are approaching it differently. For instance, Singapore is saying, as a government, I'm going to be in charge of providing those opportunities. The UK is taking a different approach, asking every employer to put 0.5 percentage point of their payroll for lifelong learning, precisely for that. You know, in the United States, no one is doing that, and therefore, if you don't do it, ultimately, if we don't provide access to lifelong learning throughout the life of citizens, you are going to see more of what Luis has been studying: inequalities, disparities, tensions, social tensions. Absolutely. But once again, higher education has a role to play, because also we have to change our models. For lifelong learning, we cannot expect people to come to us and spend a year or two confined to a campus. They simply not do it over their lifetime. Once they finish, if you want, a degree or whatever, we have to go to them. We have to have short courses, what I call certificates, stackable certificates, and you have to adapt to the reality. And frankly, various countries are experimenting with precisely what you are saying, namely, how can we provide lifelong opportunities, including India. India being done through NGOs too.
Thank you.
So that was excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Luis.
Not only the UK has this backpack with money for the workers. Macron has just passed a law in France in March, that lifelong opportunity law that allows workers to choose what they're going to spend, and hopefully we'll do that in Spain as well. So that is very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Luis. Thank you.